The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
So we're back on as a trio.
We are. Welcome back. Thank you. Mike.
It's great to be back in the States on domestic soil.
Yep.
Yeah, but see, so in celebration of Far From Home, you actually went overseas?
I went overseas.
That is called method reviewer right there.
That's right. I needed to get in the mood.
But he never made it to Paris. Did you go to Paris?
I did not.
Oh, okay. So you stayed true. I like it. Good for him.
If you haven't figured it out already, this week we are going to be discussing Spider-Man Far From Home. And in an inspired choice, Jeff's pick for classic this week is Donnie Darko. So it's a Jake Gyllenhaal double feature.
We're Gyllenhaal in this week.
We're all Gyllenhaal in.
Interesting choice. We will get into that as well. That's
so, but before we do, as always, we like to bring you people the news of the week. So
we do have some nerd news, so let's get into it. Break out your Dinglehoffers, boys, because we're about to eat crow. I don't know where I get my news items sometimes.
Wait a second. That whole sentence made no sense to me.
You know what a Dinglehoffer is? All right,
No.
I'll give you okay. So a couple of weeks ago, I announced that Disney is doing a live-action version of The Little Mermaid. Because, we can't just be happy with the animated version now. We got to do the live versions. And I said that Leah Michele had been cast as Ariel.
Yes.
That's not true. Apparently, this young girl, her name is Halle Bailey. Now, it's not Halle Berry.
That's made up.
It's Halle Bailey has been cast as Ariel. And I guess she's one of these Disney girls, or they're part of a singing duo. But she's young. And hopefully she'll do a good job. But you don't know what a Dinglehoffer is? Do you remember the scene where Ariel and the seagull?
Buddy Hackett, right?
She finds a fork and she goes, "What's this?" And he goes, "Oh, that's a Dinglehoffer." And then he immediately puts it through her hair.
That's terrible. My Disney cred just shot right down.
I thought I was pretty clever with that, but apparently not. Moving on. Okay. Mike, you still reading the Walking Dead comic? I know you're watching the show.
I am. Yes, I am.
Did you get your last issue?
I got the issue where Rick was shot and killed.
What?
Spoiler!
I know, right? Was this 193?
I would hold on a second. Let me see if I can.
You better look right now, my friend.
It's not. It's 192. Is the last.
Oh, dude, does your local comic store pull?
Yes.
Okay, you better go as soon as we get off. And
I'm out of here right now.
You should have, because that's the last issue. Robert Kirkman canceled the series.
Get the heck off out of here.
You didn't even know?
I didn't know.
No way. You've been overseas. This was he never announced this. And when the issue dropped, he said, yeah, this is the storyline as way as I always wanted it to be. And I didn't want it to cause a big controversy. This is, in fact, the last issue. So people are now racing to the comic store to grab this, and the local comic stores are now bumping it up to like $10, even if it's in your pull bag for the $2.99 or whatever. eBay's already got it all over the place from $30 to $60.
I'm totally okay with this.
Paying more money, or the fact that it ended?
That it ended. I think that's awesome.
But yeah, people are flipping out. So of course now, but they're screaming that their local comic stores are now bumping the price up. I mean, in reality, if I'm going to go into the comic store, I'm going to buy every issue and then resell them on eBay anyway. So why shouldn't the comic store reap benefits?
I'm okay with it,
right?
Because my guys are going to have it in my.
I hope so, and if they're good guys, I hope that they do not jack up the price on.
Now, I'm more concerned, less so with the series ending than Mike's casual spoiler. at the beginning of this conversation.
I don't give a shit, to be honest.
So that's akin to saying, like, hey, Mike, did you see the latest Star Wars? You mean the one where Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father? Yeah, I did.
Yeah, but he was talking about the last issue. So if you read the book, I would think that you would have already known.
Now, Jim, were you gonna run out and buy this?
No.
He is now. I would think that 192 would be more highly sought after than 193.
Now, you know what I would love? Because I don't know if, Jeff, if you've read anything about the actual plot of the last issue. I have not, but if they actually wrap up the zombie apocalypse, like, or at least give it an origin or a reason for being, I would love that. But just to end it ambiguously,
it was a dream, like Dallas.
Yeah,
it was all a dream sequence. Rick wakes up in the shower.
Yeah, with Victoria Principal, no less.
Well, there's worse ways to go. All right, so that's interesting. You'll have to keep us abreast of this, Mike, and tell us what happens when you go to your store. Here's my other news item. We all watch Laughing. Are we right? We're all in the same age lane.
Yes.
We're okay. Artie Johnson just passed away.
Oh,
seriously. Raise your hand if you really knew that he was already alive. I just assumed he was dead.
No hands.
Right?
Yeah.
I didn't. I had no clue. He was 90. I feel like he was 90 years old on the show. Maybe that's just because he always played like that salacious old man trying to hit on Ruth Buzzy. And the only other thing I remember was that he always was like, they would do like the German soldier. And he would just kind of pop out of the bushes and be like, very interesting.
Wasn't he on Hollywood Squares a lot?
Oh, I'm sure he probably, all those guys were back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, Artie Johnson, poor Artie Johnson, dead at 90. We didn't know you were alive. So
speaking of deaths of classic comedy, Mad Magazine ending.
That is the next on my list, my friend. Sad state of affairs. 67 years of publication. And Mad Magazine is closing the book.
Just to fulfill their subscription commitments, they're publishing reprints until the end of the year for another year.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But I'll tell you this, back in the day, Mad Magazine was, it was my gateway drug to all.
It was Mad Magazine and Cracked, which is
see, I was more of a Crack guy than Mad. Mad Magazine, the artwork was just a little too off kilter for me. Once you start down that road, then you get into Weird Al and some of this other kind of left of center entertainment. Boy, I love those magazines.
But Mad had Spy versus Spy.
Oh yes,
they did have Spy versus Spy.
Yeah, that was a benefit over Cracked, and they also had that fold out that you always got on the back cover.
Oh, in the back cover, which was always very genius.
Yep.
Yeah. I can't imagine you'd find many pristine issues that didn't have the back cover folded.
But of course, I'd be fooling myself to say that I've actually looked at Mad Magazine from the time that I was.
Well, that's just it. Which is,
yeah.
I mean, I had every cover that had any even little inkling of a Star Wars reference in it, and those movie parodies. I mean.
Oh yeah.
That was the best part. Sometimes I saw those long before I ever saw the movie.
Like, for example, again, I'm going to bring it up, Alien. They had a great Alien movie parody.
Yeah.
But I don't remember at this point now if I read that in Cracked or if I read it in Mad. It just kind of all blurs together.
John Severin, who was the artist in Cracked magazine, had much more spot-on likenesses of the actors. So to me as a kid, I gravitated more toward his stuff. But yeah, I think that, that content really kind of shaped my warped mind. So rest in peace, Mad Magazine. I guess Alfred E. Newman is now looking for a new job. He should be worried.
Are they trying to move this into like a virtual realm, or is it just done?
I don't know. You think that you would have jumped on something like that a couple years ago? I hate to say the death of publications. They've been lamenting the demise of print for years, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to dig out my issues now. And then the only other news I have on a personal note, we just hit 10,000 downloads. So
yes, we
thank
did.
you very much.
Nice.
That's a big milestone, boys. So congrats and thank you for everyone who listens and downloads.
Yes,
legally, not illegally. Can you download us illegally? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
It's not like we're making money out of it.
Not like Napster.
No, Napster. I don't need that guy from Ulrich from Metallica coming after me.
Lars coming at you.
Lars. What's he doing now? He's downloading. My news.
That's it. News out.
News out.
So, gentlemen, Far From Home.
Yes. This is the second Spider-Man movie that has home in the title.
It is. And I was thinking, what could be the third? They're going to have to go with this theme.
Well, so can we just do this? Can we just all agree that this is amazing? Highly recommend it, and then talk about that end credit scene.
Yes.
Let's just skip it.
But no, I was thinking about possible third movie titles, and my favorite is Homie Don't Play That.
Homie Don't Play That. I was going to go with Homesick, but Homie Don't Play That. Is it like a straight up 90s version of Spider-Man?
No, it's going to be like a Marvel team up with Homie the Clown.
Homie the Clown? I like it. Well, Marvel did have Obnoxio the Clown back in the day.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I think you just hit on it. Yeah.
So, yeah, let's talk about this. Now,
let's go.
Homecoming, was an out-of-the-park success, both critically and financially, and with all the fanboys, including us. And so I've been counting the days to this sequel, and it did not disappoint. Now, I have to start out by saying this has probably been the most spoiled movie. If you aren't living under a rock and have seen all the commercials and various trailers for Far From Home, they give away quite a bit. The biggest spoiler in the trailer is that MJ figures out that Peter is Spider-Man.
Right.
Which you'd think you'd want to hold back and save for the people actually watching the movie, but no.
No, they still throw that right out there. And you said that they've been promoting the heck out of this on like the kid networks.
Yeah, I do my best. I close my eyes when the commercial comes on, but there's only
Kevin Feige made it known that this is the very last movie in this whole 23 Infinity Saga.
Right. This phase.
Right. This, I guess, phase, right.
But it's not like they're going to deny that Infinity War ever happened.
Oh, no, not at all. But you get a feeling, especially, we get into this end credit scene, that things are brewing, that, you got a whole new world to deal with. And I thought the opening of this was brilliant to just catch up the audiences on what happened in Endgame and that little in memoriam with Whitney Houston. So you see the little tribute to Tony Stark and Captain America, and
which was brilliant because as it's playing out, you see the in memoriam and you think, oh, that's going to be a Stan Lee thing, right? And it's terrible. This Whitney Houston song, how
I know that's how
cheesy is this? But then you realize it's the bad on purpose kids network in the high school. It's like, of course, it's genius. This is
and I thought it was great. I thought, you're right. It's brilliant the way that they kind of caught you up. But that just makes me think that everybody disappeared. Like, there's no other way to really wrap your head around this except to just go with the fact. And I said this before when we talked Endgame, which Sony is like, what do you mean everybody dies and comes back 5 years later? And they're just like, yeah, figure it out.
Yeah, and I was reading that Marvel actually wanted to hold off the release of Far From Home until possibly 2020, just so there wouldn't be any runover with Endgame, because they realized if it came out in 2019 the way that Sony wanted to push it, they would have to market it before Endgame came out. So then,
they did a little bit. So we already knew there was a new Spider-Man movie in development and that it was coming out after Endgame, before Endgame came out. So you're like, oh, well, apparently he comes back.
It was just a case of not if he was going to come back, but how.
How? Yeah. I guess we all knew that these characters were going to somehow rebound. And they call it the blip. Really, who came up with that?
I call it the dust snap.
What'd you call it? The
dust snap. Dust.
Yeah. Dust snap.
It wasn't the blip referring to when they came back and not the actual snap where they drifted away? I guess because they would because it looked like, in the little footage, they reappear exactly where they disappeared. It's true. And it's 5 years later. Right. Now, this is interesting because I was a little confused because, as you said, Jeff, all the characters we knew from Homecoming all got dusted. So they're all back at the same age. But they did say their classmates that didn't get dusted, they're 5 years older and they graduated. But what about the one kid? There's one kid that's suddenly this big hunking guy. And so I don't know. So he's 5 years older, but he's still in the same class as them? I don't get it. He's a dunderhead, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things which you just go with it, right? I guess. Yeah. It didn't really take away from my enjoyment. So every major character that we've seen in the Spider-Man universe disappeared. And then immediately came back, and they all got their job. Well, not all of them got their jobs, I guess. And you wouldn't think your house would be there. Oh, Aunt May made a comment about that the people who were living in her house, they had to fight to get it back or something like that. There's a throwaway line, but Yeah, because
a lot
if you
of
think about it, if half the population is gone for 5 years, life readjusts itself, and it's a rude awakening when everybody's back because the resources and everything else that everybody's adjusted to.
Dude, that's my car. I bought it from this guy who found it abandoned. No, it's not. Yeah, that's my car.
It would be chaos. It'd be anarchy.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened to Liz, the vulture's daughter?
She moved.
They moved. She did make mention. And here's one thing I will tell you, which was Michael Keaton's name is in the credits on my Regal app. And as I'm going into the theater, I happen to look at the times and it has Mike. And I'm like, son of a. I'm like, I don't want to know that. And then he wasn't in it at all.
He wasn't in it at all.
I don't know.
Yeah, doing my research for Far From Home after I watched it, early on in 2017, 2018, Michael Keaton signed on for this movie. So I have a feeling that he did film something, but it was never used.
Well, it had to have been just a little throwaway thing.
Yeah.
Because he's still in jail.
Because, at the end of Homecoming, there's a lot of interested parties in who Spider-Man is. So now... we won't get into it yet, but as you'll see, this is going to play big time into the third movie, Spider-Man's identity. But let's get into this movie here.
Let's break this down because...
this is basically the Brady Bunch goes to Hawaii, but it's Europe.
That was a 2-episode.
It was a 2-episode arc. Peter Parker's science class goes on a European vacation. Not the entire class, just the science class. Now, how they justify that, I don't really know. How do you get that past the school board? We're taking them to Europe, but only this class. The other ones aren't good enough. Just this class is going.
Just these kids who have been missing for 5 years. You know.
So how many kids are there? Like maybe 10 that are on this field trip?
Maybe. I'm going to say a little bit more, but not by much.
And of course, it's all our characters from Homecoming that are in the same science class, and they're all on this trip. So they're going to hit Venice, London. And where else did they go? Prague at one point?
Prague. But that's after they get hijacked. That's not...
They're going to Paris.
I don't think that was... Yeah, they were going to Paris, and that was... So this is the whole drive, which is Peter just wants to go away with his friends. He doesn't want to take his spider suit with him. Obviously, at this point, we know there's a scene early on, so we know that Aunt May is in on who he is and embraces the fact that he is Spider-Man.
And she's struck up a relationship with Happy.
Which is probably one of this. I will say this is a very character-driven movie, and I loved that relationship.
And I love the fact also, as you said, character-driven, and there's a lot more interaction with Peter as Peter.
This is more like, when we used to read the comics, it was Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. It's a Peter Parker story with elements of Spider-Man thrown in.
Yeah.
Because he really doesn't want to be Spider-Man. He's like, you know what? I just want to be a kid. The great thing is that, we've seen such a buildup of Tony Stark as this mentor for Peter in the other movies. And his ghost looms so large over this entire storyline with Peter's motivations, Happy's motivations. The poor kid's got like this heavy burden on his shoulder because everyone wants the next Iron Man and they just assume it's going to be him. And he doesn't want the responsibility. He just wants to go on vacation, be with the girl that he has a crush on, and tell her how he feels. That's it. That's the driving force of this whole movie.
You gonna be the next Iron Man now?
Well, no, I don't have time. I'm too busy doing your jobs. Oh. I'm kidding. Look, keep up the good work because I am going on vacation.
Of course, events conspire to destroy his plans.
As anybody who's ever read a Spider-Man comic will attest, Peter Parker's luck is just horrible. And this is one thing I'll say, which is, I read Spider-Man long enough that eventually he became a college professor, he got married, and he had adult problems. Peter Parker and Spider-Man just work so much better as a team with teen angst and teen issues. And Tom Holland is just so solid.
Yeah. Genius casting.
Genius casting. We've had this discussion before, which he is the perfect Spider-Man and the perfect Peter Parker.
The plot thickens very early on here because actually the opening setup takes place in Mexico.
I liked it. I liked the way that they opened this up with.
We have Nick Fury and Maria Hill visiting a small town in Mexico that's just been leveled by a cyclone, tornado, whatever, it's an active...
Whatever they want to refer to it as, yeah.
But Nick Fury is there because some reports have the cyclone having a face. So as they show up and they're surveying the devastation, in comes in a cloud of green smoke, and it's not just because he had some bad Taco Bell. It's just how Mysterio traveled.
That would propel you forward.
In comes Quentin Beck.
It's Chalupa Quentin.
He's here battling the elementals. And you only get this like little tease at the very beginning of the movie before you even see Peter.
Yeah, because you get the one ground monster comes up, and
Yeah.
he immediately shows up to save the day.
So later on, you find out that Quentin Beck is from an alternate Earth, Earth 833.
This is Mr. Beck.
I could have used someone like you on my world.
Your world? Beck is from Earth, just not ours. The snap tore a hole in our dimension.
You're saying there's a multiverse?
His Earth has been destroyed by these 4 elementals.
Which they give away in the trailer.
Yeah.
Which is like, if you're going to start introducing multiverses, you think you'd want to keep that under wraps.
Which is a nice carry through from Spider-Man into the multiverse.
Yeah.
You're suspicious of this character, Beck, from the get-go because you're given very little explanation from him and Nick Fury as to how he's there and what his purpose is. You're just given kind of like the greeting card overview. I was on this Earth, now I'm here, and it's my life work to battle these elementals.
And we need your help.
And we need your help. And that's it. That's all you hear from him. It's like there's no reflecting back on his life on Earth. Nothing of the science.
No, he does, lament the fact that his family was killed by these things, and he's looking for revenge.
But you get a sense that, because even Nick Fury at one point says that he's pretty much in the dark, the way that things are. He's got no more intel anymore because since he's come back from the snap, everything's kind of reset.
Yeah, and I will tell you that I felt that Fury and Maria Hill felt off to me.
Yes, they did. They did.
All movie long, and of course that pays off. You actually get
There's a reason why. There's a reason why. So, and of course, Mysterio is a huge, huge Spider-Man villain. So seeing him as a mentor to Peter Parker is like, this is wrong.
Well, but not only that, if you've read any comics in which Mysterio is in, you know what his powers are, which is illusions and hallucinations. So you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Because I think when we first saw the first trailer, my son said he's making those illusions. He's creating the elementals, to look like a good guy. So it doesn't take much to figure this out.
It's true, but also you're thinking, but these elementals, they're real. They're causing destruction. So how can they be fake?
Right.
So,
you're right. Yeah.
But it's all revealed. There is a great scene, even though you sense it's coming, it's coming because Mysterio is supposed to be a villain. There's a great scene in the bar where Peter has these sunglasses left over from Tony Stark. Tony Stark has passed away in Endgame.
And it's just, he is, like I said, the ghost of Tony Stark in Iron Man is just through, whether or not they're in the school and you just see a collage of Iron Man artwork from kids or these wall murals dedicated to him. Peter can't go anywhere without Tony Stark's ghost literally shadowing him.
And so these sunglasses that are left behind are, the acronym of the sunglasses is EDIT. E-D-I-T. Which stands for Even Dead, I'm the Hero.
Beautiful.
Genius. So these glasses, when you put them on, it's kind of like a miniaturized version of the Iron Man armor. And it kind of, it locks into Peter through a retinal scan. So Peter has access to all of Stark's weaponry, including satellite. So he can control, that's a pretty big responsibility to give to a
stupid 16.
A sophomore in high school,
Right, yeah.
Or a junior or whatever Peter is at this point. And Peter's feeling that as well. He doesn't really want these sunglasses. It's all that he can do to not lose them on this trip.
Right, just on the bus trip alone, he's like... And he's dealing with this because he just has this whole plan with MJ that he wants to get her alone on the top of the Eiffel Tower and profess his love to her. The other kid that you'd spoken about who somehow grew the 5 years but is still in the same class also has eyes on MJ. So there's this kind of like this rivalry back and forth. And there's a really funny scene in the bus where unfortunately Peter unleashes a drone which is now set to destroy the bus with the kid in it. And he has to stop it. And that is it's slapstick, but it's so well done. And the scene where he distracts the entire team, they all look up and he flies out the top of the bus in true Spider-Man fashion and, thwips the webs to stop there were so many great moments in this movie, beautifully realized.
And this scene where Peter almost kills his entire class makes him realize that he shouldn't have these glasses. So he doesn't want the glasses from this point on. Right. So
these were given to him by Nick Fury, correct?
They were,
because
as a leftover.
There's a whole running joke, which is Nick Fury, Happy's trying to tell Peter that Nick Fury's trying to get a hold of him. And he's like, I don't want to talk to him.
Nick Fury's calling you.
I don't really want to talk to Nick Fury.
Answer the phone.
Why?
Because if you don't talk to him, then I have to talk to him. I don't want to talk to him. You sent Nick Fury to voicemail?
I gotta go.
And he just like hangs up on you. You can't ghost Nick Fury. And he just continues. There's like a montage of him just turning off his phone every time it rings. And so, of course, Nick tracks him down in Europe.
Yep, and repeatedly, Peter says, I'm just a kid, I want to be on vacation. Nick Fury even tries to bring him into a new Avengers, along with Mysterio. He needs new heroes. They're having a meeting in Berlin to bring these heroes together, and Peter says no, much to Nick Fury's chagrin.
Right, and he's going down the list of names. He's like, well, what about Thor? And he's off-world. What about Captain America? And he goes, don't you invoke her name, which actually comes back later. It makes more sense at the end when you realize why he was so mad at, him uttering Captain Marvel's name. But he's like, I'm just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's like, Dick, please, you've been to space. It's such a great line. But no, he wants nothing to do with it. And he purposely didn't bring his spider suit. And unfortunately, his aunt packed it anyway. So there's even a better scene when he's going through customs. And they're like, go to check his bag. And he's like, there's nothing in there. And they open it up and there's a suit.
And a banana.
And it seems like it just goes on forever. He's just kind of staring like, oh, this jig is up. And a lady pulls out the banana.
They battle Molten Man. They don't actually call him Molten Man in the movie.
I don't think any of them have names.
No.
But Quentin does refer to them as elementals. And I will say, it's notorious that one of the hardest things to animate is water. And that Hydro guy is just, when they're in Venice, so well done.
It is just
very well done.
The combination of the CG effects and the actual live water effects, splashing everybody, drenching them with water is flawless.
I will say the action sequences in these, it's absolutely amazing. And later when they get into London and he's
so this fight in Prague actually sets up the meeting between Mysterio and Peter in this bar. Just coincidentally, these elementals just happen to be where Peter is. That's where
wherever they go, it doesn't matter. And Nick Fury's trying to get him to Prague, and he's like, "We're going to Paris." And then all of a sudden, the parents are like, "There's two chaperones." And once again, you get the adults that are played for chumps, but I will say they had some of the better lines throughout this movie, because at one point the elementals start merging together and the two adults have this argument over, he goes, they're like Power Rangers. He goes, Power Rangers? You're talking like Voltron. They're not Power Rangers. Do you even know your superhero? So it was kind of a funny little exchange. But yeah, he's constantly upgrading them and sending them in the direction he needs Peter to be.
But it is like the Power Rangers, isn't it? I was thinking to myself, but wait, the Power Rangers also combined to make like a giant, whatever you call it,
like a
Zord or
yeah.
So they're both right, Voltron and Power Rangers.
Yeah. But Voltron came first.
Yes, it did.
Yes.
So, but you get the great reveal when Mysterio reveals his true colors. He's only trying to get that Edith from the Edith sunglasses.
And Peter gives it to him willingly.
Because he makes it seem like it's Peter's decision. Well, it's really, he's just coercing him.
He is well played. Yeah, Peter's been well played. And this is what's great about it, which is he's a 16-year-old kid. And while he's a friggin' super genius, he has no street creds whatsoever. And so that's right. He thinks he's doing the right thing. I'm relinquishing the power of this and giving it to an adult that I respect. And then Quentin, as soon as he walks out, you realize that he's been duped.
Then all of a sudden, it's just like this wonderful feeling washes over you. I've got the Mysterio that I remembered from the comics. The entire bar dissolves. The whole thing has been just a setup. Everybody in the bar is a hologram.
And the people that are there helping Quentin, you find out they're all disgruntled Stark workers.
Yeah.
And you find out that Quentin actually created the software, the BARF. That Tony
was classic.
And somebody, if you go online, somebody actually theorized a fan theory when I think it was that Iron Man 2 or 3?
It was Civil War, I think.
Oh, it was? Okay. Somebody actually theorized that was created by Quentin Beck. So, well played, whoever
Hats off to that person.
Right? So so poor Peter, he's been played, and now they have the entire Stark arsenal at their disposal.
But it's great how they retrofit so many comic plot lines to revolve around Tony Stark, and it just all makes sense. Like they did the same thing with Ultron, rather than have Ultron be built by Hank Pym, which was storyline from the comic.
Yep.
Well, why don't we have Tony Stark do it? And so it's just to have.
So once again, his ghost. We literally see a zombie Iron Man at one point when Quentin when Mysterio didn't. The kids came up with a name for him. He didn't have a name.
No.
You would think if you're going to impersonate a superhero, you'd want to.
But he adopts it gladly, and we know why because
Right.
it kind of feeds his ego.
Right.
But once you have the big reveal that he's a disgruntled Stark former employee, was let go because he was unstable, as he's and you have all these other employees. He's got a little team.
He's got a team, and like you said, even though they're illusions, they're still causing damage, and you realize it's all being done with these drones, which is brilliant. And you actually see a scene where they're running through the hologram, and he's up in the antes. All right, I need more firepower here, so that it's just even more destruction because he wants to come out and look like he wants to be the next Iron Man.
Yeah, which is a great scene because it's very akin to the X-Men in their danger room. He's testing out his projections and his elementals like inside this big set, for lack of a better term, with these drones that have not only weaponry to simulate the destruction, but also the projectors that create the holograms.
Yeah, he's like standing in front of a green screen.
Yeah, and half the time he's not even there, just like in the comics.
He's got a big helmet. And that's one thing, too, which we know in the comics, it's much more hallucinogenic illusions. This is more, they go high tech. But what we didn't bring up was the fact that Nick Fury actually designs an alternate costume for Spider-Man, so he's not pinpoint. So he's so afraid of losing his anonymity. And it's like, well, I can't just keep showing up wherever my friends are. They're going to put 2 and 2 together. And it's like, this guy's running around with no mask on 3/4 of the time. So it's only a matter of time before someone figures him out anyways. But they give him this black ninja suit. And he immediately gets penned as the Night Monkey by Ned. But there's an unbelievable scene where he confronts Mysterio. And he's just getting hammered with these visions. And to me, it is like everything you wanted to see in a Mysterio attack. Which is, he's getting multiple Spider-Mans. They're climbing all over him. He thinks he's in a warehouse or he's looking in a mirror and he falls down. It was so well done. It was very well realized.
But it may be wishing for too much, but it was too short. I thought those scenes
you want to see
over.
a little more of it, right? Because you get to the end and it's really just, Spider-Man and he's fighting the drones. He was able to get inside the illusion pretty quick and disable it. And
since we're talking about Mysterio and his gang of lackeys, can I just mention that his right-hand man, William Ginter Riva, is played by Peter Billingsley from A Christmas Story.
Oh, no, I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah. As he played the same character in Iron Man.
That's great. I wish he would have at least said, oh, but I didn't say fudge.
So we get some great Spider-Man Mysterio battles, the best of which take place, as Jeff just said, in Spider-Man's psyche, really. Yeah. Very off-putting. It kind of makes you off-centered watching it, and it's just done brilliantly.
I will tell you, and I got to look more into this, but I saw that there was a screening of this in a new theater that's a 270 diameter screen.
Really?
270. So it's almost a complete wraparound. And those action sequences must have been unbelievable. So I need to find out where one of these screenings are, and we need to go because I think that's the future of our theater experience.
So you're talking about like completely surrounding you?
Well, it's not 360; it's 270. Okay. So it's got to be within the peripheral vision. Without breaking out my mathematical compass here and figuring out that 270, it's got to go from eye line to eye line on your left and right hand side, so that you're completely immersed in this curved screen environment, which is got to be even more, even more in your face than say an IMAX.
Are you making this up?
I am making it up. I want it to happen, so
I've never heard of this, and I think
neither have I until I saw an article. So I need to go back and do some more. And listen, next week I'll be making a mea culpa on this one too. That it was fake news. We got a lot. We didn't even talk about MJ. Zendaya, who I guess I didn't even realize that was her name. I'm going to say this is the most well-rounded female character in the entire MCU that doesn't wear a cape or carry a big stick. She was such a joy in this movie because she really was kind of a curmudgeon in the first one. And I think that her character is so well realized in this one.
But it's funny how she kind of plays Peter by saying he's Spider-Man, and she's not totally convinced that he is. But he totally buys it and admits to it.
Yeah, I was 67% sure.
So let's get into major spoiler territory now. There's a
we
battle.
forgot to tell everybody we spoil these things.
Yeah. So the ending features a great battle between Mysterio and Peter on the London Bridge.
And there's a great, when Happy comes and picks him up and he realizes what's going on, Peter realizes that he has made a huge error in giving the glasses to Quentin. And then there's that scene in the Tony Stark's, it's not a Quinjet, but it's a super sophisticated, and he builds himself a new suit. And the scene where he's using the 3D imager and he's putting the gauntlets on, and you're just like, he is Tony Stark. He is becoming, and Happy kind of stuff. I got goosebumps when I saw it. And Happy's sitting there and he just kind of like, all right. Maybe he did make a right choice.
And he even plays the AC/DC song that he hears.
Well, that's it. He throws it on. He goes, I love Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. So there's a great final battle, and you get a little bit more of that Mysterio subterfuge, the illusionary stuff around, but Peter now knows what it is, so he's kind of ready to deal with it. Because Mysterio's trying to fool him because he's got a couple of different holograms of himself, but Spider-Man figures out which is the right one, and he's shot by one of his own drones in the end. But not before he records some footage of him when this is revealed in the end credits. Now, we could talk for a while about this, what the ramifications are.
Well, that's what I wanted to get to, because the ramifications moving forward are pretty substantial.
So he reveals to the world, first of all, he's trying to show as he's dying there that he's the good guy and Spider-Man is the bad guy. And then he reveals to everyone who Spider-Man is. And you see this play out, this footage on are they in Times Square? Where are they in New York?
Yeah. He had just picked up MJ and took her for a ride, and she's like, I'm never doing that again.
And it's funny because they land on the sidewalk and nobody cares that Spider-Man is right there. They're all just walking by him like it's a regular thing. Yeah. And then they see on the Jumbotron like a CNN news break.
It was actually the Daily Bugle news break.
Yes. With J.K. Simmons.
Who is the quintessential J. Jonah Jameson from going back to the original Spider-Man movies. They pulled him in.
Which is brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant.
I may be thinking too much into this, but does the original Spider-Man trilogy exist as a multiverse trilogy?
Well, because in reality, you find out that the multiverse is all a story. He just made it up, and I was happy that didn't come true. What's that?
But is it really?
Well, I don't know, because
the story came from one of his lackeys, right? The story came from his story guy, but was he taking that from science fact and making it into science fiction?
Well, I guess we need to bear that out eventually. They do kind of leave it up in the air, but it just makes so you got the impression that Mysterio was not really that bad of a guy, but then he pulls this and it's like, oh, he's a real D-bag. This was a tool bag move, man. That was bad. Yeah, and of course, then Spider-Man ends with a what the. So, and then
just like Aunt May in the first one. So I think they're all going to end with a. Right. Maybe Homie the Clown will give us that. And then.
So that's end credit scene number 1. We now know that Peter Parker is now going to be
outed.
Yeah. So where do we go? Spider-Man Most Wanted. Bring in Kraven the Hunter.
Ooh. Oh. So hopefully, they don't resolve this in the first 10 minutes of Spider-Man 3. Like, oh, you remember that happened?
I think you gotta, because how many movies are going to be coming out in front of this? Who knows?
Yeah.
Marvel hasn't really dropped anything, so we don't know. And then end credit number 2.
Yeah, Kraven. That would be a great
on the hunt,
great villain. Yeah. Now, they also, the character of, I read about some Easter eggs in here, that some fascinating Easter eggs. Whenever they would show an elemental, if you freeze frame the screen, whenever the elemental first shows up, there's a reference to their first appearance in the comics somewhere on screen. For example, when the Molten Man first shows up, one of the license plates gives the issue from Amazing Spider-Man that you first are introduced to the Molten Man. The same thing with Hydra Man and the Cyclone, I think, maybe. But yeah, that's some fun stuff. And also, the driver of the bus, once Shield's kind of commandeers, not Shield, but once Nick Fury commandeers their vacation, he sets up Dimitri as the driver. Dimitri, it happens to be the name of the chameleon from the comic books. So all these possibilities of characters. Then again, we also met the Prowler, played by Donald Glover, in Homecoming. So all these characters could come back for the third one.
Yeah, because you still have the Vulture in prison, and who is the guy who approached him in that end credit?
The Scorpion, you're thinking, because he had a Scorpion.
That's right. Yes, and he had a grudge. So you could bring in the Sinister Six.
Yeah. And of course, we had another post-credits sequence here beyond the big reveal of Spider-Man.
Yeah, so sit all the way through that Ramon song and those end credits. Because
stay to the end, because it's not a throwaway. It is this speaks to everything that you've seen in the past 2 hours in this movie. You find out, big spoiler alert here, that the Nick Fury in this movie is not actually Nick Fury. It's Talos from Captain Marvel, the Skrull, and his wife, who's also
Maria
masquerading
Hill.
as Maria Hill.
Hill.
But apparently it's not nefarious. They're doing this with Nick Fury's cooperation, because Nick Fury, you see him, you think he's on a beach somewhere, but then it turns out it's a virtual setting, and he's on a Skrull spaceship out there doing, well, who knows what.
So that leads the question, like, how long has Talos been playing Nick Fury? Is this just intermittent? Has it been since Captain Marvel? Because there's a scene, and I can't take credit for this, but there's a scene, Nick Fury makes a mention that he never eats toast cut diagonally. And there's a scene in Age of Ultron that contradicts that. So was that then Talos as Nick Fury during that scene? Because now you're led to believe, has he been on that ship all along? When did he get there?
Well, Nick Fury had the pager for Captain Marvel at the end of Infinity War, so you have to think that was the real Nick Fury.
Right, correct. Right.
So maybe he's just been doing this since the blip, since they came back.
Yeah, maybe.
That was my take.
It was definitely interesting, that little reveal. And it did make a lot more sense, especially like I said before, when he got really mad at Peter for even mentioning Captain Marvel's name. Because obviously Talos would have an issue with her.
And there's that throwaway line where Nick Fury's talking about Kree sleeper agents.
Yeah.
If you noted that. So, and I thought once he said that it was just like an aside. Like, that's got to mean something. Why is he talking about Kree in this movie? And then, and I'm so glad it was Talos with Ben Mendelsohn playing.
Actually, he did. He played. Yeah, because he was so great in Captain Marvel. So Nick Fury was ghosting them all. So the whole funny joke of not ghosting Nick Fury, he was ghosting them. Yeah, this was fun. It was a fun movie. Like I said, it's a lot more. I don't even want to call it a rom-com, but I guess maybe it is. I mean, we didn't talk about the Ned Betty romance, which is just hysterical. You know, Ned's all about going over to Europe. He's a single guy, and he's gonna hook up with all these, because, foreign people love American people. My audience lost it during this. And then he ends up falling in love on the plane ride over there with this girl. And they're like, hey, babe. They get off the plane. They're like, oh, babe. The scene where Happy is trying to protect the kids, and they're trapped in the crown jewel room of the tower. Yeah. And he throws the shield. And he's like, how does Cap do that? Just stupid little moments like that I loved. It definitely is a much more character-driven movie than we've seen in the past.
It is. And I just loved Mysterio. I loved Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. It's probably, even counting Green Goblin with Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, he may have been my favorite Spider-Man villain on screen yet.
Interesting.
Mysterio.
Really? Better than Keaton as the Vulture?
Yeah, I really
think so.
So we had this discussion, my son and I, about which one is better, Homecoming or Far From Home. And it is tough because Michael Keaton is he's a much more understanding villain, I guess, because he's not really a villain. Yeah, it's tough, but this definitely stands on its own.
But Mysterio was just always so cool in the comics. Just
absolutely. And like I said,
the
fact that they were able to pull that off, like I said, those hallucination illusion fights were so well realized, and you want to see more. Like you said, you wanted to see a little bit more of that. But
and I loved how they stayed true to the costume, like even down to the eye.
Oh, the eyeballs on the lapels. Yeah.
And I was so glad that they still decided to go with the fishbowl helmet. So
yeah, because it really makes no sense whatsoever. But from a design point of view. So who knows where we're going from here? I mean, this is all new territory, which I'm excited about.
It's just sad that we have to wait at least another 2 years to get the next installment, right? It's crazy how fast time goes by, because it just seems like yesterday I was sitting in the theater watching Homecoming, but it was actually 3 years ago now?
Yeah, I'm never going to die because these things keep going.
I know. I always see it. If I die now, I'll never see the next Star Wars movie.
That's like you're going to be on your deathbed. I can't die. I'm going to miss the Spider-Man. The next Spider-Man movie.
That's why these guys are like, can I get a private screening? Can I see it before I drop dead?
But yeah, so how many buckets would we give Spider-Man Far From Home?
Boy, I don't think we ever gave buckets to. We didn't review Homecoming, did we?
No, we did not. That was
No.
before our time here at TMI.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, wow. I think I liked Homecoming better, but I would go 4 buckets for this.
Yeah, I would have to go at least 4 buckets.
It could be more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going 4 1/4 just
There
for
you go.
Mysterio bumps it up that quarter for me.
Yeah.
How he handled the illusions was fantastic.
Speaking of illusions, this next movie was crazy.
But before we get there, hey there, Nerdkinders. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast?
It's true.
Wait, is this the Podcoin app we were talking about last episode?
Yeah, it's a free app that actually pays you to listen to podcasts.
I've actually been using it for a while now. So when can I expect my big paycheck to roll in?
Slow down there, Colonel Steve Austin. You listen to podcasts and earn Podcoin points while you listen. Then you turn those points in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks.
Hi, Starbucks blonde vanilla bean cocoa milk latte.
Or
there are multiple causes available to donate your points to. But since it's no secret that we here at TMI rely heavily on our local library systems to feed our classic movie feature, we thought it would be noble to get you, our listeners, to donate to the Books for Poor Kids charity.
All right, I like it. A podcast with a cause.
so rebellious.
Here's all you need to do. Step 1, download the Podcoin app right now on your phone.
I'm assuming it's available for iPhone and Android.
Yes. Step 2, use our code TMI NerdKind. That's TMI NerdKind to get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. Step 3, subscribe and listen to TMI every Wednesday or any of your favorite podcasts. We don't mind, as long as you earn points. Don't forget to use our unique code, TMI NerdKind. The more you listen, the more you earn.
Funny, I never thought of Jeff as a latte kind of guy.
Wah, wah, wah.
Oh, the time is now, the time is here. Now's the time for a bite of cheer. A tasty light where the price is right. Well, look at here, you'll dig this sight. The moment's handy for a piece of candy. Just name your brand, they're all so grand. Hey, what do you think of a nice cool drink? Or a big box filled with a popcorn thrill? Let your taste buds meet with an ice cream treat. Refresh yourselves, it's time to eat. So come on, folks, let's join the band as we all head for the refreshment stand.
Okay, so we're back and we are talking Donnie Darko.
Ugh.
Going from Mysterio to Donnie Darko.
Gyllenhaal looks like he's about 4 years old in this.
He does.
He was a baby.
Now, let me just say that there are more extreme close-ups of Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie than possibly of Frodo in the entire Lord of the Rings series.
That's pretty substantial.
It got kind of annoying after a while. I don't need to see Jake Gyllenhaal looking at me from the top of his eyes again, ever.
So you don't want to watch this in that 270-degree screen?
I don't think so, no.
No.
Just watching this brought back some memories when I first saw Donnie Darko in 2002, I think, when it first came up.
Yeah.
I kind of felt that it was too pretentious back then. I thought it was it was too cool for school, too self-aware, too pretentious. And I got kind of that with this viewing, but I appreciated it more than I did way back when. So
If
you were to ask me buckets then, I would have been used them very sparingly. But
sparingly.
I think I'm going to give him a few more than I would have when I first saw this.
Right. I do say I remember liking this a lot, to the point where I bought it on Blu-ray, and there it sat. I never opened it or watched it again, because it's a heady movie, and it's one of those movies that you really have to be in a mood for. And I held off on watching this for quite a while, even once we assigned it, because you can't just get up on a Sunday morning and pop this in.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to invest and not be distracted. But as far as being pretentious, the guy who directed this, Richard Kelly, he not only directed it, but he wrote it. And he was 26 years old. So, he probably had, and it was his first movie. So yeah, he probably had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, he probably
was a little more pretentious.
It's a very, with a woe is me kind of an attitude.
It takes itself very seriously.
Yeah. It's like, the parents are just portrayed as idiots, and whatever might befall them, they deserve. And the kids are just downtrodden upon, the privileged kids in this movie that go to a private school. And the worst private school you have ever seen depicted on film. It's like, it kind of gave me say if an 18-year-old were to write and direct a movie about the 60s, they would probably just assume that everybody was a hippie in the 60s.
Right, yeah, right.
So it's the same thing here. It's like, I went to high school in the 80s. People were not snorting cocaine in the hallways.
Hallways. Massive parties.
It's like, it's probably, he watched an episode of Miami Vice, and then he wrote and directed.
He was like, that's exactly how all of Miami is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the mom, Mary McDonald, I thought she was...
Yeah, I didn't realize, of course, after seeing Battlestar Galactica, I realized how significant she is to the genre.
Well, I mean, she's got some serious street creds between Dances with Wolves and Independence Day and then Galactica. So, yeah.
Now, Jeff, this is an inspired choice, maybe subconscious on your part, but it has more in common with Far From Home than just Jake Gyllenhaal. They're talking about multiple realities here. They're talking about wormholes. So
which actually ties in with Deja Vu as well, because they literally, wormholes with the Einstein Bridge, and you're just like, okay. But yeah, it was more about the illusional, going with the power of Mysterio. Yeah.
And Drew Barrymore, also probably the worst teacher that I've ever seen.
Well, that's why she gets fired.
I know.
But there's a lot of big names, like you said. So, Mary McDonald, you got Drew Barrymore, obviously Gyllenhaal, who I don't even know. Was this like his first movie?
Not his first.
Did Bubble Boy come first?
No, I think he was in October Sky, and that was...
Okay, all right, so he was a little kid there.
Yeah.
But you had Noah Wyle, Seth Rogen, who this was his first movie.
Seth Rogen, the immortal line...
I like your boobs.
Right.
He must be.
That's his first line ever in a movie. That defines his acting career.
Patrick Swayze,
who is this? He's not even a motivational speaker, right? He kind of like runs this control fear seminar thing. I don't know, but I did find it. They cast Maggie Gyllenhaal as his sister. That's typecasting right there. So, but she was actually well done. I liked her.
This may have been one of the first things that she was in. So
yeah. But she had that kind of tit for tat, as siblings, and especially the opening scene where they're sitting at the dinner table and they're just going at each other, and she calls him out for being off his meds. That was a fun scene.
But yeah, I think this whole thing plays like a 2-hour episode of Daria with an Einstein Rosenberg
thrown in for good measure.
There's also this weird sci-fi undercurrent with the whole wormhole thing that kind of elevates it above that in the end. So it's difficult. I'm on the fence with this one. I really dislike parts of it, but I liked parts of it at the same time.
It's a tough nut because you don't know where it's going, and I think this is a movie that you will appreciate more so on multiple viewings. Doesn't mean I'm going to go back
I
and
agree.
watch it, but it's like you keep waiting for something to happen, and nothing really happens. And then you see pretty early on, or you're alluded to the fact that he's got issues. He's seen a therapist. He may or may not be off his meds, although you did see him take his meds. But then he's immediately visited by this giant demonic rabbit named Frank. He wakes up the next morning, he's passed out on the golf course, and he comes home to realize that a jet engine has fallen off a plane and crushed his bedroom. And you realize that if he didn't go out and visit Frank, he would have died. And this kind of sets the whole story in motion, because now people are looking at him like, dude, you're the guy who escaped death. And he's just ambivalent to the whole thing because he's a weird animal, to be honest with you. You don't really know if you like him because you don't know if he's like psycho. And this whole back and forth with this rabbit who shows up and tells him to follow me into the future.
Yeah, and you don't. Another reason you don't like him is because his unfunny, mean, and racist friends. That poor girl that they berated at the bus stop.
Yeah.
who
it's
one of those, and she's one of the best characters, and I love her.
Shut up!
Yeah, go back to China. Yeah, no, and this all takes place in '88, so it's a period piece, and I will tell you right now, the soundtrack is phenomenal.
It is. Oh, that's one of the best things about it.
The soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal, and a lot of these songs that they pull out, you open up with what is it? The Killing Time.
Moon. Echo and the Bunnymen.
Echo and the Bunnymen. The bunny reference.
Yeah.
So that's kind of so there's a lot going on here that you're just, like, you're trying to piece it together. You're trying to figure out, where is this going?
And then the fact that they can't find the plane that the engine fell from.
They have no idea. Right. They have no idea where this came from.
The FAA wants them to keep their mouth shut about it because they have no missing plane where this engine came out of. So, yeah.
And then there's a scene where there's an old lady in the roads.
Getting the mail?
He's in a car with his dad, and the old lady's standing in the middle of the road, and they stop, and she whispers something to his ear. But a lot of this goes back to his conversations with his therapist. And she quickly takes to hypnotizing him. But there's things going on, and you realize that he's causing it because Frank is telling him to do this stuff. So now you're like, all right, this guy is like just straight up. And there's a countdown clock. Because Frank tells him something to the effect that the world is coming to an end. The end is near. And so you have this countdown clock where you have 24 days until the quote-unquote end.
Well, specifically 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 12 seconds.
Because he writes it on his arm.
Yep.
So, but he also befriends you mentioned the new student, Gretchen. And he walks her home. He saves her from some bullies or whatever. And he's like, what's your name? Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko? Sounds like a superhero name. He goes, well, it makes you think I'm not. And you're like, oh, maybe.
Then there's that total Daria line. Oh, you're weird. Well, that's a compliment.
But it's a compliment.
Yeah.
And you find out that the old lady basically whispers to him, every living creature on Earth dies alone. And then you're just like, what is going on with this movie?
Whom they nickname, all the kids, very nicely nickname her Grandma Death.
Grandma Death.
Yeah. And one of his friends at one point, which is one of the only funny lines that they utter in this movie. I think that they went for comedy with these characters, but they're just so mean-spirited.
They are, yeah, that you don't really care.
None of their lines are funny except for when one of them says somebody should write that letter when she's
and he does, because she's constantly going to the mailbox, which is a plot device because he does write her a letter.
Yes, he does. Yeah,
because you find out from Noah Wiley's character, the science teacher, that she wrote a book on time travel. So now he's starting to piece it together that maybe he was meant to talk to her or get in touch with her. So there's all these weird connections going on. I will argue a little bit with you, which the best line that his friends had is when they had the whole discussion about they needed a Smurfette.
You see, no, that I thought was also very mean-spirited. Where they're talking about Smurfette getting gangbanged? That's not funny.
Yeah, but then Donnie's like, listen, he goes.
But that's the great part. He salvages the scene when he says, listen, enough.
First of all, Papa Smurf didn't create Smurfette. Gargamel did. She was sent in as Gargamel's evil spy with the intention of destroying the Smurf village. But the overwhelming goodness of the Smurf way of life transformed her. And as for the whole gangbang scenario, it just couldn't happen. Smurfs are asexual. They don't even have reproductive organs under those little white pants.
And I have a feeling that kind of ties into the end of this movie, where Donnie is not the psycho that you're led to believe.
No, I agree with you. So even more so was the school gets flooded and they're forced to go into these other rooms or whatever and deal with this. And there's some vandalism that goes on and they're trying to figure out who's causing all this. We know as the audience that it was Donnie because he divulges all when he's in therapy under hypnosis. But they have this class where they're dealing with the lifeline, and there's fear on one end and love on the other. And then they had to read these little kind of examples and then put an X where that fell within the fear and love. And I think that plays in big time at the end of this movie, which is that his love was greater than his fear. And that's, you take that lifeline analogy and that makes his decision. Because it's there's a whole scene in the school auditorium, and there's that one teacher, the mother, who's just an absolute jerk. And she's fighting against Drew Barrymore's character because she had these kids read this book by Graham Greene called the Destructors, in which they do exactly what plays out, which was they destroy the home and they turn the water on. They're like the water bandits in Home Alone.
They just want to see what happens when they tear the world apart.
So she's spouting that this teacher is unfit and that, we're demoralizing these kids and just giving them ideas. And Drew Barrymore says, "Do you even know who Graham Greene is?" And she goes, "I believe we've all seen Bonanza." That's great. He ends up dating the girl, Gretchen. There's one point where they're in a movie to watch Evil Dead. She's like the worst date ever. That movie just started and she fell asleep.
Yeah, I don't think you could fall asleep to Evil Dead, actually.
Right.
Unless you were drugged. But also, what kind of a Halloween double feature is Evil Dead and Last Temptation of Christ?
Well, you got Fear and Love. You got the two ends of the spectrum again. Yeah. But he has this horrible conversation with Frank, who's now like not just in the mirror, he's like sitting next to him. Frank takes off the mask and he even says, "Why are you wearing that stupid rabbit mask?" And he goes, "Why are you wearing that man costume?" He goes, "Take it off." Yeah. And you realize that Frank's eye's missing because there's a secret.
Yeah, but Frank turns out to be his sister's boyfriend at the end of the movie. Right,
because there's all these cryptic notes. They end up having a big party. The parents are away. The sister gets into school, so they decide on Halloween they're going to have a big party. And there's all these cryptic messages. Frank was here, went out for beer. And you're just like, what is going on? Like, because up to this point, Frank was in his head.
Right, but you would think that he would know who his sister's boyfriend is and that his name is Frank and that this is the guy that appeared to him in the movie theater with his eyes shut out.
But Frank convinces him to go to Jim Cunningham, which is Swayze's house, and burn it down, and then return to the movie theater just for the end of the movie, right in time for the end of the movie. So he's got an alibi that he's been with his girlfriend for 2 hours, but she's been sleeping.
If you kind of think about it, Frank is enabling all these wrongs to be righted through his appearances and what he's telling Donnie to do, because obviously he tells Donnie to burn down Cunningham's house, and then so in so doing, he reveals this kiddie porn dungeon, as they call it.
Right. Yep.
And also, the flooding of the school sets up a chain of events so that the mother is gone, so they can have this party, so that Donnie can go out and go to Grandma Death's house and have that confrontation at the end. His girlfriend is run over, but that sets in motion the events of...
By Frank,
yes, who he ends up shooting.
Yeah. In the eye.
In the eye, yes. So then we get the mother's on the plane. This is where it kind of runs you ragged. It puts your brain
falls off the rails
through the motions. Then the mother is on the plane, and it turns out that her plane is the one that drops the engine onto the house.
But it falls through a time warp.
It does, yes. So you assume that the mother is gone because the plane is now crashed, right, in her reality. And it goes through the time warp, the engine. That's why they can't find the plane in the beginning, is because it's from another timeline.
Right, correct. Yeah, because they have the serial number's been burned off. They have no idea where this came from. And that's because it came from the future. And I believe that Frank came from the future. I believe that Frank, when he keeps talking about the end, he's talking about the night that he gets shot. She dies, the girlfriend, Gretchen, and he gets shot. And he is the only one who time travels. And he, as a ghost, every time we see him from the beginning of the movie on, he is a ghost explaining to Donnie. He's guiding him through and helping him make changes so that when they get to that moment that he makes the right decision, which is he wills himself back. And as opposed to going out to find Frank, he stays in bed and thus dies when the jet engine lands on him, thus negating everything that happened. The girl, Gretchen's still alive. Frank's not shot.
Yeah, the
mom,
kiddie porn dungeon still exists. Yeah.
Right.
But, you follow the time travel mentality, which is if you change the past, then the mom never got on the plane, and then the engine would have never fallen off. So to me, that's the paradox of the whole thing. But it ends with him dead, and everyone else is alive. And you even see that little scene with Gretchen, and she riding her bike. Oh, what happened here? Oh, neighbor got killed. What was his name? Donnie Darko. Did you know him? No. But then she kind of waves to the mom, and you're like, do they remember what happened? So it's very ambiguous, and like you said, it is a little pretentious because you're left to figure out what the hell did I just watch. it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter that it made sense because it is kind of a fun ride. But
it's fun in the fact that it all ties together with the plane coming from the future. But but what does it signify is a mystery.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you got that great Mad World acoustic version, which I think encapsulates the entire movie, which is just.
Do you guys hear that noise in the background? There's like a rabbit's heartbeat,
thumping?
kind of a yeah.
I do hear some thumping.
Like
I did hear it.
like speaking. I think that's Frank's heartbeat. That's going on.
It could be.
Yeah,
it's a sign from the future.
So, and when they cart Donnie out on the stretcher, it always strikes me whenever a character is like a dead body you see on a stretcher they're putting into the ambulance. They always seem to put Frankenstein boots on the dead body. Like the feet are always exponentially larger than anything else on the body. It's like, do they put those boots on you for the afterworld? Is that they're getting you ready for?
Maybe he had rabbit feet. Yeah, this is a tough animal.
It's out there.
It is out there.
Definitely out there.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did this director make anything else after this, Richard Kelly?
I think he's written some things, but I didn't see anything of note, like on for directing on his resume.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know. I still think the overall pretentious kind of feeling did stick with me, even though I did appreciate it a little bit more than I did back in the day when I first saw it.
I think I definitely appreciated it more now, but I think I also know what I was getting in for when I watched it again. Because the first time if you come in blind on this and you're just like, oh, I heard good things about this, and then you're like, what the?
Yeah.
We can also add this to the kids on bike genre, because once again, you got a bunch of kids on bikes. True. I'm gonna start writing a list of movies.
A much more mean-spirited version of the kids on bikes.
Yeah.
So I would go. I'm thinking 2 3/4.
Ooh.
I don't think it would make 3 for me.
I think it's worth checking out. I'll go 3.
2.
That's fair. If I watch it again and start looking for little stuff, will I find little time travel continuity errors? Like you said, once the kind of the time travel thing comes into play, then you're kind of like, all right, now where are we going with this? Because it really, it's an interesting experiment.
Yeah, and sure. I did like it. Again, I liked how they tied in the beginning to the end. But as to why or how or
right
what it all signifies,
it doesn't. Yeah, that's left open to interpretation.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go, Donnie Darko.
There you have it, Donnie Darko. So that leads us to our confessional this week.
Confessionals.
We were going for a Spider-Man themed confessional. So maybe we should bring it back to the comics rather than talk about the movies all the time. So seeing as we're all fans of the Spider-Man comic from back in the day, what is your favorite story arc or story period from the Spider-Man comics?
Let's go with Mike.
I like anything from the Silver Age. All of those are great. The introduction of the characters, but they're just too expensive to buy.
They do make reprints.
I'd go Todd McFarlane's Venom.
Oh, that's actually not a bad call, because that really was a fun run. So that's the original Eddie Brock?
That's the original Eddie Brock. Starts at issue 298 or 299.
Yep. Sold my 300 for a penny.
Oh, yeah, I had it too. I sold it for my first car. Not in itself. Nice. That one issue did not get me a car. It was my whole collection, but it was that included.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, it was a pretty penny.
Look, a 9.8's going to go for like $2,000.
That's crazy. Well, see, that's the problem is I read my comics, so I'm never going to come out with a 9.8 sitting in my boxes for years.
Neither
it's difficult enough to find a 9.8 without reading it.
Yeah.
In a shop.
Right. It is a holy grail. I know there's a lot of people that are out there looking for it, and it's probably one of the more imitated covers.
Yeah, it does play off a lot of homages.
Yes. So, but that's not a bad call.
Yeah. I was never really down with the portrayal of Todd McFarlane's Eddie Brock as this huge Hulk Hogan looking guy, but yet he's a reporter. Right. Yeah, I wasn't. I think maybe scale him down just a bit, because Venom at least could build him up. This the symbiote could build him up himself. He doesn't need to be this towering hunk of a guy like a Joe Palooka. Not only, it's a kind of
that's exactly what he looked like, Joe Palooka.
Yeah,
like crew cut hair and
his oft broken nose.
Let me go next, Jim.
Sure. Go ahead.
All right, so I always loved the Spider-Man team-ups because every issue it was a different guest star. You know, whether it was Wolverine or you brought in Iron Fist or even like some of the second rate, you know, it was a lot of fun. But I'm going to give kudos to the entire Ultimate Spider-Man run from 2000.
Oh.
Marvel was smart because, again, you can't have 60 years worth of stories and not have the characters age. So eventually, Peter Parker stopped being a teenager. He got a job. He was a college professor. He was married. He had adult problems. And that's where I think a lot of the newer readers lost interest because it didn't relate to them. So Marvel rebooted, what was it? It was X-Men, Ultimate Fantastic Four, Ultimate Spider-Man, and then the Ultimates, which was the Ultimate Universe version of the Avengers. And those 4 books went right back to the roots. So now your Peter Parker is your 13-year-old kid. It was written by Brian Michael Bendis, and Mark Bagley was the artist. And they just went back to scratch. And that whole run was so phenomenal because even though I was much older now, I enjoyed it. Like, he even had a running relationship with Kitty Pryde, who was on again, off again, part of the X-Men. But it just retold the same tale we've known, but, with a fresh perspective. And I absolutely loved that. And that ran, I think 130, 150 issues, something like that. But that's where your Nick Fury, Sam Jackson came from, which was the artist who, I think it was Brian Hitch, when he was working on Ultimates, and they decided to make, new versions of these characters. That's where the Black Nick Fury came from, and he used Sam Jackson as his reference model. A lot of these Marvel comic unit, the MCU, borrowed greatly from the Ultimate Universe, more so than the core comics.
Yeah,
especially that last Fantastic Four movie, I think was really true to the Ultimate Fantastic Four early on. So there you go. That was mine.
You see, mine, this has been a story that has always stuck with me. It was only a 2-issue arc, but it was Amazing Spider-Man 269 and 270, I think from 1985, if I'm not mistaken. So what it was is a story where one of Galactus's former heralds comes to Earth. His name is Firelord. I'm not sure why he came, but he visits New York either to seek out the Avengers for something. And he can't find them, and he runs into some trouble with the locals in New York, so he starts to destroy stuff because he's very hot-tempered, is Firelord. And he's a former herald of Galactus. Spider-Man shows up and recognizes who this guy is, and he's thinking to himself, okay, I'm not good enough to beat this guy by myself. I've just got to distract him until the Avengers show up, and they can take care of this guy. He tries a couple of different things, and it doesn't work, and he finally gets fed up, does Peter Parker. He no longer thinks of himself as inferior, and he gets fed up by this Firelord guy constantly telling him that he's inferior, that like he's a little bug, that he's just going to get crushed as soon as I get my hands on you. And he does his gymnastics things and beats Firelord to a pulp at the end of issue 270, pummels him until he's unconscious, until Cap finally shows up and stays his hand saying, "Kid, I think you've won. I think you've done it." So, and that's always stuck with me, that Spider-Man is good enough to go toe-to-toe with a former Herald of Galactus if he stops holding back and reaches his full inner potential. And I think this issue, I recommend that you guys look that up online, because I'm Mike. I know that you might still have the Marvel Unlimited app that you could look up these old issues on. So it was a good one. And it was right in his black suit phase. So that may have had something to do with it as well, because he had the symbiote on him while he was battling this guy. So there you go. That was mine.
Nice. All right, cool.
So should we talk about next week? Are we doing Crawl?
Listen, you guys can record. I'm going to be MIA next week.
So Mike, what is your take on this? Should we do Crawl?
Yeah, we should do Crawl.
All right.
Nice.
So we're going to commit to it. Crawl next week with Lake Placid as its classic feature.
Fine and dandy.
All right, let's do it. So there you go. Next week, Crawl and Lake Placid. Hopefully it'll be good enough for us to actually talk about, but we'll see.
Oh, it'll probably be
sometimes
bad.
a bad movie is fun.
Hellboy.
And listen, you can't go wrong with the dirt potty mouth, Betty White in Lake Placid. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
what? Oh, see, now I'm gonna miss it.
Bill Pullman, Bridget Fonda. Yeah.
Bill
that's a good one.
Pullman,
Bill Pullman, right? Like
Oliver Platt is in there. Bill
Oliver
Pullman's
Platt.
in there. Oh, maybe you're
Pretty
right.
sure.
Maybe I need to rewatch it. I'll mail in my notes. How's that?
All right.
Crawl,
All right. So next week,
Crawl, Lake Placid.
we'll see.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Darkseid, the most dangerous villain in the universe. Powerful enough to defeat any hero he faces.
Even Superman?
Yes.
Batman?
Yes.
Spider-Man?
Well, Spider-Man wouldn't fight Darkseid.
Is it because he is too lazy?
What a bomb!
You know, this really lowers my opinion of Spider-Man.
Homie, don't play that. Homie, don't play that. Homie, don't play that.